And her name's on there.
Yeah.
And you knew her?
No.
But she was in that same area.
But like that year when they dedicated the statue down there at the monument.
Yes.
Her mother was there. I shook her hand.
But that meant the world to her.
I didn't know what to say.
It's hard.
There used to be a show by the name of China Beach. And there was an old sergeant on China Beach, and the guy, the actor, I don't know what his name is, but I shook his hand down there. And he actually was a Vietnam veteran, as I recall.
Really?
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
I the China Beach TV series. I got that. It just came out on DVDs like last year.
Okay.
And they had music issues is the reason why, because they had music from the 1960s. It was all woven into this thing.
Oh, cool.
And they had to do the copyright stuff on it, I guess, which is why that had never appeared on DVDs before that. And some of those shows they're too sad for me to watch. Some of them are funny, and some of them are just stupid. Yeah, I don't know what they thought they were doing. Like in the third season, it was like, well, maybe we can pep up the ratings on this TV show by having everyone in the cast have sex with everyone else in the cast. And I thought just some of those are just stupid.
Yeah, trying to get ratings.
But it's some of those shows are just too sad for me to watch.
It's understandable.
Supposedly, like I remember there was a show by the name of Jag. It was on years ago, and they had one of the young fellas that was in I don't know, it was in Afghanistan or something, and he realized that this kid was in this minefield, and he went out to get him, and he managed to blow his leg off. I couldn't watch that.
No.
I just couldn't
Memories.
watch that. It just hit too close to home. I just couldn't watch that.
I would think. So after you had the reconstructed surgery, then, and then I'm assuming you're discharged soon after that.
Yeah,
or you got sent back to the States.
Well, they sent me to. I was at Chulai.
Yeah.
And then they more or less got me stabilized there, and they sent me to Cam Bay again. And then they loaded the plane at Cam Bay, and we were all, you understand that I made this transition between a time when I could carry 100 pounds on my back, when it was 100 degrees out, and now I can't even lift my arms. I can't even sit up. I wouldn't have been able to walk for anything. It was like I wasn't fastened down in that litter, but I might as well have been. Every part of my body felt like it was weighted with concrete. I was so weak. And I always loved to fly, but I can tell you that the flight from Vietnam to Japan, it took forever to load the plane in Cam Bay. And it was like a furnace in there. It was a C-41 Starlifter, and they had these pipes that went vertical in there, and as every so far they had these rings welded on there, and they passed the litter handles into those rings, and then they back up into the other rings, and then they tied them off so that they would, they wouldn't go anywhere. And then they installed your buddy right above you, and it was like a furnace in there. And those Air Force nurses, they would give you a little water, but they didn't give you too much water because then you'd have to go to the bathroom.
Yeah.
And it just created it took forever to load that plane, and it was so damn hot. And when that plane left and it started to get cool in there, it was a relief that you just can't imagine. It's hard to explain that. It's hard to put words to that. But they took us to Japan, Yokohama. I had signed up for Yokohama for R&R. I got Yokohama all right, but sure as hell wasn't R&R. And they transported us to 106 General Hospital in Yokohama. And I was there until, through September. I think it was like October. And then they sent us back to the States. Went through Alaska. Mm-hmm. And came back to Fort Meade, Maryland, which was I think it was Andrews Air Force Base, and I remember that the guy there was an officer there that basically gave us a direct order that we weren't supposed to say anything derogatory about the Army or something. I don't know what I expected when I got back to the United States, but believe me, there was no welcome, and nothing. And where they took us in like an ambulance to Fort Meade, Maryland, and they just housed us in these old barracks. They just warehoused us there, and then later they sent me to Walter Reed. Walter Reed, there was like a fight there. You had to take care of yourself. You think anybody's going to take care of your wounds? You figure on doing that yourself.
Really?
You remember I told you about that guy that treated us like we were chunks of meat? Mm-hmm. There was a lot of that. Sometimes the nurses or the people would come in and say, well, they got their traditional Army clipboard there, and he said, well, okay, we got to see to it that this crip over here gets to occupational therapy at such and such time. They aren't talking to the crip over here. Crip is short for cripple. Mm-hmm. As I said, there were other wars where they were nice to people that were wounded. That was some other war.
Mm-hmm. Not the one you experienced.
No, that was not. I wasn't ready for that. I don't know what the hell I thought I was going to be like, but they were not nice to us.
So when you got injured, you said telegrams were sent back to your folks at home.
Yeah.
Can you explain that a little bit?
They were delivered by taxis. The first time I wasn't seriously wounded, but it was just a hand grenade fragment, and that was delivered by a taxi driver. And my brother seen this guy pull in, and he thought, man, that guy is really lost, but he was unfamiliar with how they were to deliver stuff like that. I do think that if you got killed, that they did something else. In other words, they probably went through town and found a pastor or something. Mm-hmm. But I don't know that. But they just delivered these telegrams by taxi. I don't know if they even are telegrams anymore, or whether that even exists anymore. Could be that it isn't. These telegrams are so old that those originally were on white paper, I think.
Yeah, they're getting a little yellow.
Yeah.
When you were over there, how did you communicate back home at all with letters?
Wrote letters a lot.
Okay. Yeah. Did you ever get to talk on the phone?
When I called home from Japan on the phone, it was almost like magic. And one of the things that's hard to explain is that if you'd been in Vietnam for a length of time, it was almost like the time when you were alive before that was just like a dream or something. It fogged up your memory of everything you'd ever experienced. Like even now, I think back when I was in high school. It seems like 100 years ago.
Oh, different life.
Yeah, it was. You remember I told you about that business about before Clamfier and after Clamfier. Mm-hmm. It's. I think a lot of people have experienced that deal in war, where they. There's like a time warp there. It's like you remember when you were a kid, but God, it seemed like 100 years ago, and it was only a couple years before that. I told you about the pretty girl at East Harbor. Well, I remember I got these convalescent leaves while I was at Fort or at Walter Reed, and I remember one time I was flying back, and there was this class trip, and I would have been great if one of those young girls would have sat beside me. They wouldn't sit with me. They avoided me like a plague. I don't know. I don't know what else to say. It's but like I explained to you, like that business about that. It's like human nature, mm-hmm. And to try not to judge too harshly. I got to watch that myself.
Yeah. Well, so after you're discharged, you go home?
Yeah.
What did you decide to do when you got home?
I wanted to get a job right away, and my brother Walt had talked to me at Brush Wellman that I was going to be there putting in an application.
Now you had how many brothers?
I have 3 brothers.
Okay.
My 2 older brothers also served in the Army, are also drafted. My brother Walt did not go to Vietnam, but he didn't have a lot of fun in the Army, I can tell you that. My brother Jim completed the tour in Vietnam. He was a truck driver. But Jimmy doesn't understand that business. Like he had one person in his entire battalion that was killed in the year that he was there. And I can tell you that in Company B, there were about 100 people in Company B. During 1968, 24 of those people were killed. Mm-hmm. Every year at the battalion reunion, we'd read off the name of the people that were killed in 1968, and it's 93 names. But it kind of comes back to, why do people go to war? People go to war, and it's not just us, it's the other side too. They go to war so that the people back home won't see Mr. War. Or at least not directly.
Yes.
And that's the reason why everybody goes. It's the reason why those little guys in the black pajamas went too. Mm-hmm. Don't have a real answer for that.
Okay. Well, going back to the other question, like you said, once you got back home,
yeah.
You said you came back to Elmore, correct?
Yeah.
Brush Wellman?
I got a job at Brush Wellman, and I kind of think they would have not hired me except for my brother Walt putting in the good word for me.
Okay.
Back in those days, they had it figured out that we were all dopers, They seen it on television, And you realize that those television shows were, that's what the lefties that wrote those television shows believed, Mm-hmm. But I worked at Brush and worked there for over 10 years, and then one time when I was laid off at Brush, I got a job as an auto technician, and that was what I did.